Brian Wickman?
Uh, Brian was the oldest in a family of 4 or 5 kids. I think I'm not sure, but what I had every one of the Wickman kids in school, starting with Brian. Brian had a neat sense of humor, and he was probably the class clown. And not that he was disruptive, because that wasn't it. He just would say, he would have little jokes, or he was always telling something that was a little funny. And he was always good for a laugh. And one particular day he came in, well, I guess we were sort of in the middle of the class, I don't know. And he had gotten up and moved to the front of the room, and he was sitting on my front table. And he turned out, and he was telling a joke, and he said, "Get off the stove, Grandma. You're too old to ride the range." And I always remembered that little joke. I can't remember jokes at all, but I always remember Brian telling
But
it.
was it? It wasn't disrespectful, or it
No,
wasn't directed
oh no,
at
no,
you.
it was just funny. That funny little thing hopped out of his mouth, and along with probably dozens of other funny little things that he would say that would be humorous. And I would, as long as I was in Elma, if I went to church on Christmas Eve, I almost always saw Brian there. And his mother and I went to church circle together, and then she married Cliff Hattery. So sometimes I almost forget that she was Barb Wickman, because I've known her so long now as Barb Hattery. But there were the twins, Julie and Jack. They were the youngest ones. And there were 2 more girls, and I think they all started with, like, J's. So there was Julie and Jack.
These are Brian's younger.
They were his
brothers
younger
and sisters.
brothers and sisters. And but I just always remember good. He was he's a bright boy.
Very bright.
Yeah. This class was a bright class.
Well, Ann Hall alone would pull all the others along.
Well,
Sorry, Ann.
Yeah. Well, it was. It was a very bright class.
Well, it would have been even brighter if I had been in it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's right.
Bazinga. Of course, then I wouldn't have gotten any work done with Cindy in the class. Cindy told me this story one time. When she was teaching, she had this little girl and little boy in her class, and the little boy would be right by the little girl's side, and they would hold hands and sit next to each other constantly, to the point where they called the parents in to talk about it, because it was just beyond the pale how these 2 little children were seemingly so attracted to each other.
Mm-hmm. And that is really kind of the way it is sometimes with children. And, probably a lot of very good marriages come out of relationships where children grew up as friends and they just always clicked. I've known people who went through high school and dated the entire time, and they probably went off to college and maybe went to the same school and married, and it was always like they were like this. It didn't change at all. Where some combinations, you had to date a number of people before you finally came to the one that you were simpatico with.
for as great as love is, I think it's important too that you like the person.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that and you have to have some shared experience. There has to be there's just that something that connects you to another person. It's like the science fiction thing, the meld, you know, where your pattern of thinking runs on the same line.
So back to Brian Wickman. Any more Brian Wickman recollections?
Well, the other than his funny little things, and then, you know, over the years, I've seen him, and his children will be with him, and he'll say, "Well, this was my sixth grade teacher," and we go back to being student teacher.
Oh, isn't that?
You know, just always immediately, we're right there.
I know. When I visit my parents, I went back to being the son.
Mm-hmm.
When I go visit my brother and sisters, I go back to being the brother and sister that I've always been. And
Right.
when I go to my high school class reunion, I go back to being me, like in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and you know, that's where I think that's.
It's
I
like
really-
you're picking up where you left off.
Yeah, you are. But the thing is, there's a continuity there. There are lots of people today, because our society moves around so much the way they do. I think that's why we have as many divorces as we have, is that you don't share that history, that common history of who was there, and shared memories are very important to everybody, I think.
So that does that summarize Brian Wickman?
Yeah.
Say one more thing about Brian. I've always liked Brian.
I've always liked Brian.
Everybody
Everybody liked
liked
Brian.
Brian.
Yeah, everybody did.
Okay.